Welcome to our first topic in Richard James Mathematics Resources. This first topic is based on directed numbers. In the CXE examination, CSEC in particular, candidates will not encounter many questions that are based purely on directed numbers, with the exception of one or two on the multiple choice paper. However, positive and negative numbers have a wide range of applications and quite relevant to many other topics. If a knowledge of the manipulation of directed numbers is not understood, students will not do well in the following topics: factorization, functions, equation of a straight line, vectors and matrices, and solution of equations. As a matter of fact, a very good knowledge of the manipulation of directed numbers is required if students are to do well on any topic that involves the rectangular coordinate system. Besides, the CXE examination report stated that students make mistakes in situations that required them to manipulate positive and negative numbers, which result in the loss of vital marks. Directed numbers are positive, and the positive is indicated right here in short by plus followed by the suffix VE, and negative we have here a negative sign or a minus sign followed by the suffix VE. So directed numbers are positive and negative numbers. Take note of the symbols that are used for positive and negative numbers. Of course, you will see those symbols coming up time and again. Students are discouraged from saying "and" when referring to arithmetic operations for the following reasons. There is no regular arithmetic operation that is called "and." Students have a tendency to make the "and" general for both addition and multiplication, when, in fact, the rules for multiplication and division are different from those that pertain to addition and subtraction. It results in a negative psychological effect that causes students to make many mistakes in examinations. The CXE report stated that students make many mistakes when manipulating positive and negative numbers. This has resulted in students losing many marks unnecessarily. Perform the activities in all the suggested steps. Apply the rules exactly as stated. When working with directed numbers at this stage, students are strongly encouraged to follow all steps that are involved. This will cause students to develop the right psychological chain of thought that is required to make several similar calculations at high speed when they are under examination pressure. A negative number is always accompanied by a negative sign, but a positive number may or may not be accompanied by a positive sign. We are going to be looking at the first rule, our first rule in addition. Rule 1. When we are adding numbers that have different signs, we subtract the smaller from the larger, and the answer will take the sign as the larger. So then, when we are adding numbers that have different signs, we are going to subtract the one that is smaller in value from the one that is larger in value, and the answer will have the same sign as the larger number. Here we have two numbers, a -4 and a +5. The signs are different. We are going to do our subtraction. So we are going to subtract the 4 from the 5. Our answer is 1. So the answer is required to take the same sign as the larger number. 5 is a larger number. It is accompanied by a positive sign. So here we are. The larger number is 5 accompanied by a positive sign. The answer is therefore positive. Now, a positive number may or may not be written with a positive sign. We may therefore neglect the positive sign. We are still working along with addition, rule 1, addition of numbers that have different signs. There you go. The 7 is not accompanied by any sign at all, so the sign that we assume for the 7 is a positive sign. The 10, we have right there a negative sign, and that negative sign is very clear. So there is no doubt that this 10 is a negative 10. Numbers with different signs, we are going to subtract as usual. So when we subtract, the result is 3. We are going to subtract the smaller number, which is 7, from the larger number, which is 10. So that result is 3. However, 10 is a larger number, and it is accompanied by a negative sign. The answer is therefore a negative 3. Here we have numbers with different signs. Notice the sign of the 8 is negative. The sign of 1 is positive. So the numbers have different signs, so we are going to subtract. When we subtract, the answer is 7. 1 from 8 gives 7, or we may say 8 minus 1 is 7. However, 8 is a larger number, and it is accompanied by a negative sign. Therefore, the sign of the answer is required to be negative. Here we have 5 minus 2. Now, the 5, although not accompanied by any sign, we are sure that it is positive. So, the default sign is positive. If a number is not accompanied by any sign, that number is a positive number. We have there the negative sign that pertains to the 2. Numbers have different signs. We are going to subtract the smaller from the larger. So let us subtract 2 from 5. Subtracting 2 from 5, the answer is 3. Now 5, being the larger number, is accompanied by a positive sign, although it's not obvious. The answer is therefore required to be positive. With or without the sign, it is still a positive 3. Now let us move to rule 2 in addition. But it is for us to understand that when handling directed numbers, the positive sign and the negative sign, they have the same effect. However, the positive, as indicated by the accompanying video, the positive sign causes us to add in the positive direction, which is indicated by a movement to the right on a number line. The negative number suggests that we add in the negative direction on the number line. So then, in the context of adding directed numbers, we may use the positive sign or the negative sign to indicate that we are adding, and it is the direction in which we are adding that makes a difference. So here we are adding numbers that have the same sign. As the rule says, when we are adding numbers that have the same sign, add the values. The answer will take the same sign as the numbers that we have added. So the signs are the same, so we are going to add 5 plus 8. The answer is 13. The sign of the numbers that we have added is negative. The answer will therefore be negative. Here we have another addition. This time we are adding numbers that have positive sign. So we are going to add the values. 5 plus 4 is equal to 9. The numbers that we are adding both have positive signs. Therefore, the answer is going to be positive. And of course, with or without the positive sign, it is a positive 9. We are adding numbers again, and the signs are the same. This time, the signs are negative. So, we are going to add the values. 9 plus 6 is equal to 15. And the numbers that we are adding have negative signs. Therefore, the answer is going to be negative. Now, it is very important for us to not to be hasty to say negative and negative will give positive. As a matter of fact, and is not a legitimate arithmetic operation. We should therefore be careful not to say that negative and negative will give positive, because here we are adding two numbers with the same sign, two numbers that are accompanied by negative signs, and the answer is definitely going to be a negative. Here we are, plus 8 plus 6. The signs are the same. We are therefore going to add the values. We add the values and we have 14. The 14 will take the same sign as the numbers that we have added. So the 14 is going to be accompanied by a positive sign. And we may neglect that positive sign, as positive numbers may or may not be accompanied by a positive sign. We are going to be taking a look at Rule 3. Rule 3 has to do with consecutive signs. It says, whenever we have two consecutive signs, we replace them with one sign as follows. Like signs give a positive sign, unlike signs give a negative sign. Now, here are the two consecutive signs. Right there. The negative 9 that we have here is not affected by the consecutive signs that we have here, and is therefore taken to the other side of the equal sign unaffected. So that negative 9 will go over to the other side. Here we have the consecutive signs. Those consecutive signs are like signs. So we are going to replace them with a positive sign. So these consecutive signs are like signs, so we replace them with a positive sign. And then the 3 goes back. So we have negative 9 plus 3. And of course, at this very early stage, we are now realizing that we cannot be negligent of anything that we have learned before. Because now we have a negative 9 plus 3. we are now adding numbers that have different signs, so we are going to be depending on the principles that were applied in Rule 1. Whenever we have numbers adding that have different signs, we are going to subtract the smaller from the larger. So we have 9 and we have 3. The signs are different. Let us subtract. 9 minus 3 is equal to 6. However, the answer is required to take the same sign as the larger number. The larger number is 9 and it is accompanied by a negative sign. Lovely. Our answer is negative 6, and we have to maintain that negative sign. We cannot discard with the sign as we have done when the answer is positive. Now we have these consecutive signs right there. These consecutive signs are different. So, because the consecutive signs are different, we are going to replace them with a negative sign. However, the 5 is not affected by the consecutive signs, and it goes over as it is. Now, these consecutive signs are different, so we are going to replace the consecutive signs with a negative sign. Now we have 5 minus 2, and we enjoy just subtracting smaller numbers from larger numbers. No problem with that at all. The answer is 3. There we are. We usually put the number that is not affected by the consecutive sign as the first thing in our next step. So the negative 7 is not affected by the consecutive signs, and we write that in the next step. Now the consecutive signs are positive and the negative signs. The signs are therefore different. We are going to replace that bunch of signs with a negative sign. Now we are on the other side with negative 7 minus 4. Remember that when we add numbers that have the same sign, we add the values. So 7 plus 4 is equal to 11, and we are required to attach the sign that accompanies the numbers to the answer. This is an application, by the way, of Rule 2. Rule 2 that has to do with the addition of numbers that have the same sign. We add the values, and the answer will take the same sign as the numbers that we have added. Here we are, 8 plus a positive 5. Begin by rewriting the number that is not affected by the consecutive signs. Notice that the consecutive signs that we have here are 2 positive signs. 2 positive signs, like signs, we replace like signs with a positive sign. Now we have a plus 5, which is the normal mode of addition. So a plus 5 is equal to 13. Now we have our Rule 4, which I've developed on my own because I realize that students just make a meal of problems that have a lot of numbers that are accompanied by different signs. So Rule 4 states that when we have a problem that involves many numbers with their different signs, we sort them according to signs. Therefore, we are going to, if we are going to put the negative 1 first, then we put all subsequent negatives. So the negative 6 goes, so we imagine the negative 4 is going to join them right there. Then we are going to put the positive numbers just one behind each other. Lovely. Now we are going to apply a previous rule. The previous rule that we are going to apply is rule 2, that states that when we are adding numbers that have the same signs, we add the values and the answer will have the same sign as the numbers that we have added. Now we are going to do that with the first set of numbers. They are all negative. So if we add all these numbers that are negative together, we are going to get a negative answer. So let us add them together. We get 8 plus 12 is 20. 6 plus 4 is 10. So the answer is a negative 30. Now we are going to add all the positive numbers and we are going to write the answer right there. So all the positive numbers added together will give a positive 20. All the negative numbers added together will give us a negative 30. Now we have two numbers, and of course we are going to add them, but they have different signs. So because they have different signs, we apply rule 1. When we add together numbers that have different signs, we subtract the smaller from the larger, and the answer will take the sign as the larger. Therefore, we are going to take 20 from 30. The answer is 10, and it is required to take the same sign as the larger number, which is 30, accompanied here by a negative sign. The answer is negative 10. Another problem, most of you will be able to go straight ahead of me and work this one out by now. We have problems involving numbers that have different signs, so we're going to sort them. Now 15 is positive. We are going to put 15 first because it occurs first in the list of numbers. So let us slide right there all the positive numbers. So we have a positive 10 also, and positive numbers are finished, so we move to the negatives. So we have negative 20, negative 5, negative 35. Add all the positive numbers together, we are going to end up with a positive 50, with or without the positive sign. So the positive sign may be placed or may not be placed there. It is still a positive 50. And of course, when we add all of the negative numbers, we are going to end up with a negative answer in negative 60. Now, remember that the sign of the 50 is positive. So we are adding now numbers that have different signs. We are going to subtract the smaller from the larger. 50, we are going to subtract 50 from 60. And the answer is 10. But we are required to take the same sign as a larger number, which is a negative number, being negative 60. The answer is therefore negative 10. Multiplication and division. The rules for multiplication and division can be applied in the same way. As a matter of fact, they should be applied in the same way. For simplification, the first rule will specify multiplication or division involving only two numbers. The second rule will be a generalization that takes into account any number of operands. Rule 1. Whenever we form a product, which is the result of multiplication, or quotient, the result of division, involving two numbers, the sign of the answer is determined as follows. Like signs give a positive answer, unlike signs give a negative answer. Now we have right there two numbers. Notice the two numbers, the signs are the same. So they are accompanied by negative signs, so they have like signs. Because the signs are like signs, we are going to replace that with a positive sign. So the numbers having like signs, the answer when we multiply is going to be positive. 9 multiplied by 2 is 18. The answer is positive 18. Now we have a negative 4, but 8 is not accompanied by any sign. The sign of the 8 is therefore assumed to be positive. Now we have a negative 4 and a positive 8. The signs are unlike signs, which we will replace with a negative sign. The answer is therefore going to be negative. So we are multiplying numbers, two numbers with unlike signs. The answer is going to be negative. So there we are, a negative 32 for our answer. Now we have 5 multiplied by 4. Being without any accompanying signs, we are sure that the signs of 5 and 4 are positive. They are therefore like signs. Because they are like signs, the sign of the answer is going to be positive. So we are going to have a positive 20 for our answer. The number 10 is accompanied by, should be a positive sign, although initially there is no accompanying sign. The 7 is accompanied by a negative sign. So we have unlike signs. Because there are unlike signs, the answer will be negative. So our answer is a negative 70. We are going to move on to division, and the rules are going to be applied just as how we applied them when we were doing multiplication. Therefore, we are going to take a look at the rule again. Whenever we form a product or quotient involving two numbers, the sign of the answer is determined as follows. Like signs give a positive answer, unlike signs give a negative answer. Now we notice that the two numbers have the same sign, being negative. So they are like signs, and the answer is going to be positive. So the answer is going to be 75 divided by 25, and the answer is going to be a positive 3. We have a negative 104, and the sign of the 8 is not there before. We assume that it is a positive 8. The numbers therefore are accompanied by different signs. Unlike signs gives a negative answer. We are going to have a negative answer, a negative 13. Now 51 to be divided by 17. No sign at all. Both numbers are positive. Like signs will give a positive answer. Therefore, our answer is a positive 3. 57 to be divided by a negative 3. The signs are different, 57 being a positive number and 3 being negative. Unlike signs, the answer is going to be negative. So our answer is a negative 19. We are going to move on to our second rule in multiplication and division, which states, whenever we have a problem involving many numbers, we count the number of negative signs. The sign of the answer is determined as follows. Even number of negative signs will give a positive answer. Odd number of negative signs will give a negative answer. Now, let us take a look at our problem that we have there. 64 to be multiplied by a negative 16. Then we have a negative 2. We have a negative 8 and a negative 4. So, how many negative signs do we have? We have 4 negative signs. So, there we have all our negative signs, 4 negative signs. 4 is an even number. Therefore, the answer will be positive. We may neglect all of the signs that we had before because we are sure that the answer, irrespective of what we do, is going to be positive. So, it is irrelevant to include a sign in the next step. Of course, this is not an exercise in reduction of fractions, so we'll not go through the ins and outs of the reduction of a fraction, but the fraction will be reduced and the answer is 2. Now, we have another problem with quite a few numbers and their signs. Let us count the number of negative signs. So the number of negative signs is 3. Therefore, 3 is an odd number. The answer will be negative. The expression may therefore be written with a single negative sign. Now, the answer is going to be negative, so we cannot neglect any sign at all. We have to include that negative sign, so we may just indicate that the answer is going to be negative by just including a single negative sign in the next step. And of course, we may reduce the fraction, and the result is going to be negative 4. Now, we have come to the conclusion of our lesson, and accompanying all our lessons are hard copies of all the addition, information, and instruction. And of course, exercises are also available. Use the homework to enforce the principles that are explained. Never use the word "and" when referring to an operation. Practice the exercises applying the rules exactly as they are stated. In a later stage, when we are going to the other topics, we may not be progressing in so much detail. But at this early stage, ensure that all the rules are practiced exactly how they are stated. In the future, students may use all the shortcuts when working with directed numbers. This will not give favorable results unless they make use of all of the steps when practicing at this early stage. The lesson that you have learned will be of benefit in the near future, providing that you continue to make use of Richard James Mathematics notes. It also will be of benefit in the distant future, irrespective of your field of study. You are going to forget the principles learned at your own peril, but you will remember them in happiness.